Conservative MP Bim Afolami, thank you for agreeing to chat to us today. You went to Eton.
I did, yeah.
One of the most prestigious private school in the country. Is going to Eton a help or a hindrance in politics?
I mean, I think on some level it depends who you ask about that. In my view, I mean, look, my parents from Nigerian background, though my mum was born in Britain, medical family. We didn't go to Eton in some sort of, this is obviously the school that you will go to and all our ancestors have been here for generations. You know, I wasn't that sort. But I know that I was very privileged to get a brilliant education the way that I did. The really important thing about that school and its impact on just the national conversation, because I don't think that's too grandiose a way of describing it, is it gives people a sense, whoever you are, that all of these famous people in the past who've done things have been here, therefore you can do it.
Were you one of these young people who knew they wanted to be a politician at a young age?
What I meant to say is that no, I just sort of came across it in my 20s. No, because I was fascinated by current affairs. I mean, one thing about immigrant families is that often when you've come to this country, they're leaving something. They're either leaving not good economic opportunities or a chance to build a better life more broadly in a country like Britain. And they talk about politics constantly.
When did you know that you wanted to be a politician? How old were you?
I think probably by the age of 11 or 12. Wow. And I don't really remember that it wasn't some sort of light bulb moment or anything, but my history teacher at school, who I later found out was a senior member of the Egham Labour Party, this is in Surrey.
Yeah.
And he didn't say that at the time. I mean, I had no idea what his political views were. He used to talk to me about politics and talk about his heroes who coincidentally were Harold Wilson, James Callaghan. And so I learnt about politics actually at that age, and he must have had an inkling that I was really interested in it.
You become a politician. You thought you wanted to do it at 11. You always knew you were a Conservative way back then? Yeah. Wow. Who's your hero? Just since you talked about your history teachers, who's your political hero?
It's difficult. There are two people in particular I really admire. One is Churchill, not just for the reasons that everybody admires him, which is the war, but actually his ability to come back from seeming failure, which I think people underestimate.
Yeah,
you know, this was a guy who was continually written off and just kept going. And just, if you want an example of perseverance, in Churchill you definitely get it. But another one, who is, it's a sort of slightly strange one, is Benjamin Disraeli. Because as somebody from a Nigerian background and reading a lot of the history and literature of the late Victorian era, the anti-Semitism is just completely open, completely suffusing that society. And yet, somebody who had a Jewish background and never hid his background at all, and was very ostensibly Jewish as well, he became Prime Minister. And I just think that says a lot about the Conservative Party, but it also says a lot about him as a character and to put up with the things that he had to put up with in order to do it. And Disraeli, I think, is a bit less fashionable now, but he's a really phenomenal character.
Now, you were elected in 2017.
Yeah, the Theresa May landslide that wasn't, as it were.
You got in, but yeah, there were some glum faces on your bench at that time. You're 31 years old. Is it too young?
I don't think it's necessarily too young, but I think a lot of other people think it's too young. So when you come in, there are lots of people that will say, oh, well, young Bim, how are you? We'll when you're a bit older, we'll teach you to do this. And I do think that, and they're not trying to be rude or condescending, it's just because you are so young, you can often get held back or the sense that, oh, well, you're going to be here for ages, so opportunities might go to someone else because of that sense. But at the same time, what I have found is, because I was young, but I also was married, and I think we had two children by then. The lines on my eyes must have shown that I was slightly older than a typical 31-year-old.
And the fact that you have been in politics from such a young age will give you an insight into the difficulties that your party faces with younger voters. You have written about these difficulties. You wrote a piece a couple of months ago citing research showing that just 21% of today's 25 to 40-year-olds would vote for the Conservatives today. You are one of this group. Why do you think that only 1 in 5 25 to 40-year-olds would vote for the Conservative Party?
Basically, I think it's because of economic opportunity. And, I was very lucky because when I left university, I left just before the financial crisis. So when I left university, opportunities seemed limitless for people of my generation. And indeed, I didn't go straight into politics. I worked in the city for the best part of 10 years before coming into Parliament. There was a sense that everything was getting better. There were going to be more jobs, more opportunities. You're going to earn more money. And the financial crisis put paid to that. And the truth is, the country still hasn't fully recovered from the financial crisis. So if you're aged between 25 and 40, you have seen that as your early experience. And I'd say that the two ways in which this really plays itself out. The first are housing, and you will know about the difficulties of young people getting onto the housing ladder, and everybody watching this will appreciate that. But the second is just incomes. 2007 median income. So this is just your median person. In cash terms, it hasn't really gone up since then.
Exactly.
So if you're a young person, you've really faced a lot of headwinds compared to your immediate predecessors who saw rising income. So I think that economics, that core thing of how much money you have at the end of the week, end of the month, and this is people, by the way, graduates, non-graduates, north, south, it applies everywhere. I think that solving for that problem is really the question of our politics today.
Getting people's wages up or cutting their taxes, I suppose there's two ways of doing it.
No, 100%. And look, tuition fees is a part of this. Because, of course, if you've got graduates who are now paying high tuition fees, £9,000 plus maintenance grant, that makes sense when people are getting the sort of jobs that I used to do in the City of London, whatever, where you're earning really good salaries. It makes sense. But for lots of other people, a third of people, who go to university, they don't get, within 5 years, graduate level jobs. So for these people, that's been a bad trade. And I think we need to, and apprenticeships, everybody knows we need to increase, but I think we need to defund some of those courses that are giving bad outcomes to young people and putting that money into further education.
Give me some examples.
Well, if you look at a lot of the statistics from the Office of Fair Students, do a lot of this, and to be fair, we have actually been very transparent about all the data, so it's all there for people to see. There are many courses, mostly on the creatives or humanities side, but not exclusively, that still cost the same as studying engineering at Imperial University, for example, Imperial College, which is one of the top places in the world, still cost the same to the student. But yet the outcomes in terms of earnings are below what that same person would have been able to earn in a non-graduate job. Let's put some of that money that we're putting into that course, and by the way, those students aren't going to pay back their student loans, so the Treasury is losing out. Let's put that into getting our skills up in areas where we know we have a deficit of people.
Interesting. Final question. Do you have to be more woke to get in touch with the younger generation?
So it's really interesting. When we did the research with Onward, looking at the sort of missing millennials we talked about, I expected in the focus groups a lot of these people to talk about, we think the Tories are old-fashioned, or we think that they're not, socially liberal enough. What was really difficult was getting them to talk about it. They really didn't seem to engage with it very much at all. And I said to the team before, and I said we sent messages to the moderator before saying, look, really press them on the cultural things. And actually what they wanted to talk about was the economy. They wanted to talk about the amount of money they had and their opportunities.
And that so culture wars, there's no future for the Tories in going down that track.
But it's important because there are some in my party who think this is the route for Conservative success. And that doesn't mean that they're wrong about these questions. I actually happen to think that they're right about a lot of these questions. But the question is, what do you prioritise and what's going to make a difference to people's lives? And I just do not think, for most people, particularly millennials, aged under 40, that is the thing. It's going to be getting their economic opportunities up, making sure they make more money, that's earnings and cutting their taxes, and giving them opportunities to own a home. And if we can do that, then we've got a chance.
I really enjoyed that. Bim Afolami, Conservative MP, thank you.